All right, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is for you guys there. Just like to say thank you and welcome to another rousing session of Revit Radio. This is the webcast where you ask questions or heckle, that works too. And we give our best answers. Sometimes our answer might be, I don't know, but it's still an answer. So usually we like to try to figure it out, of course, unless it's an MEP question, then Melissa and I are like, who's in the audience? But so that's kind of what's here for, is you guys ask questions, we answer them. If you do have those questions, please put those in the question and answer pod. Otherwise, if you're just going to heckle us, if you're going to tell us we answered very poorly, feel free to use the chat pod for that. So, and if you are on the chat pod, you can, at the right above where you type your message, you can tell it to go to everybody, just the hosts and panelists, or to an individual person if you wanted to do that as well. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. Melissa, is there anything that you've come up with in the last month that you're like, oh my God, we should talk about? Three on the spot. Have you guys even started looking into the 23 stuff yet? Or are you still like, yeah, we're too busy?
Just a teeny bit. I know Aaron was getting the deployments ready, so I haven't even bothered to load it yet.
Yeah, I was successfully able to get deployments created for one of my clients. They did slightly change the deployment thing. And again, I'm not like you guys or like Aaron, I should say, with a crazy deployment tool. Most of my clients are just using the out-of-the-box Autodesk deployment tool. And I was able to get it to work for one of them this year. I struggled with it tremendously last year. So that's kind of nice. They have got it deployed to like several of their computers. And I have two other clients who are actually like up and working on 23. So it's kind of nice to be in there and this early on to be able to start looking at what's going on as we get in there and start doing all of this. So with that said, I am going to start off as we wait for everybody to type in all of their questions. I am going to jump into Revit 23 and just point out a couple of those small minor things that have been going on or that I've been noticing happening as we look into this. So, excuse me. One of those things is that when you are in the family editor, there's some new things in the family editor, which is kind of cool to see. Last week, I talked about some of the new features, et cetera, or last month, I should say. One of the things that is nice inside of here in family types is we do have a couple of new buttons down here in the family types. One of those, which I'm really excited about, is duplicate parameter. So if you're like, gee, I just need to go create another dimensional parameter or another visibility parameter, you can just duplicate this and call this, hey, Center Lake 2, sure. Give it a name, but what's cool is it knew it was yes, no, it knew it was grouped under the graphics, so you don't have to go through that whole process of new parameter, give it a name, choose the discipline, choose the type of parameter, go choose where you want it grouped, was it instance or type? You don't have to do that anymore. Just the duplicate parameter, just like, hey, what's the new name? I'll put it where I need to put it. So that's been somewhat nice as I've been going through and working on some content with for some of my clients in the 23. Really been liking that one. The other one is, and I don't know if anybody's in this, and Autodesk is still calling this, what are they calling it? A preview feature, I think they call it. But Autodesk is attempting to take shared parameters and redefine those. And basically they're creating a BIM 360 project for this. So you'll see they're calling it a tech preview. And if you click on this, it's going to go to a BIM 360 project that is your parameter service project that you set up. So theoretically, you can put all your parameters in the cloud, and then you can actually batch import a whole bunch of those as you go through. So if I go into I have too many clients. I don't actually think I created any parameters, but inside of here, I can just choose the parameters if they were here. And theoretically, you could grab several of them at once and bring them in. So unlike old shared parameters, you had to do one at a time. You can bring multiples. Right now, that parameter service tech preview is terrible in the fact that you have to define it in there if it's instance or type-based. So basically, if you're like, I want some of my width parameters as instance-based and some of my width parameters as type-based, you literally would have to have width instance, width type. Which to me, I've flat out has told the beta, because I've been in the beta on this for a few months, that yeah, that's just a not going to happen kind of scenario.
Can you upload your current file at least?
You can upload your current file to it. Ironically, too, it'll let you create a new parameter of the same name, so you can have 3 different width parameters in there. They don't have to have different names.
Yeah, because that's got different UID.
Again, it's a tech preview, as I air quote, you know, it's a tech preview when you get into that. The other thing I did want to point out, and this ironically, and I think Paul Aubin is the one who showed me this back in Revit 2019, we've had this enable cutting in views for particular families since 2019. It might have been 2020. It was actually structural connections. When they introduced structural connections, they gave us this capability to make this family cuttable in view or not cuttable in view, right? So historically, and this is an old furniture family that I've got set up, historically furniture families were not cuttable. So if I go open up this old family that I've upgraded to 2023, this is unchecked because it had not historically been able to be cutting in views. But now we have the capability to say, yes, if somebody sections through this table, I want to see it as a section, not as an end or side elevation, right? So that was something they opened up in 19. I don't think they did anything with it in 20. It might have been they opened it in 20. I forget when structural connections came out. But in 2022, they added a few categories, new categories that had it. But in 2023, they've added the capability to add that to it. So if you are just like, hey, I'm going to go upgrade my new 2023 library, upgrade my library 2023, there might be some edits you want to do looking at the enable cutting in view if that's something you're looking for, right? I know like everybody I've ever been with created like a shower stall that had all the plumbing fixtures, but the shower stall was a generic family, so we could section through it and see all the pieces and parts that made up that shower stall. You might actually be able to go to that family type and switch it back to plumbing and then say, hey, you can cut in views. So it might be a whole lot of reworking in 2023 families and content as you go through. So just throwing it out there, it's not like you have to, you don't have to do any of that, but it is one of those things that's going to make me start going back and readdressing like, oh, do I need to cut through this furniture family or not?
Do you know offhand if Windows are now one of those families that we can cut?
Oh no, let's just go change this to a window family. Well, Windows you cut through, don't you? I mean, they're a hybrid cut family. You kind of cut through.
You do, but that's why all the parallax windows are actually generic models, because they are actually cut, where most of the out of the box windows, it's just symbolic line work tied to everything.
Yeah, it's true, because the problem, it works as long as you don't use sweeps. If you do a sweep all the way around, then it sees that entire sweep. So all of my windows are a buttload of different extrusions or different sweeps. So like if I needed a piece of casing and I needed a mitered, it's 4 separate extrusions with miters on the end, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. They technically were cuttable, but not really. They were partially cuttable, but no, that is not there for the Windows families.
Okay.
But I do believe if we switch this over to plumbing, I do think they added plumbing to that. Not plumbing equipment, plumbing fixtures. Yeah, enable cutting in views. So plumbing is one of those that allow you to cut it in view. So like you can actually cut through your sinks now. So again, I like the fact that this is family based, because sure, as I cut through a sink, it'd be nice to cut through a sink, but I don't really need to cut through a toilet. I'm not going to go model the B-trap in the toilet. So probably going to say, yeah, that's a non-cuttable family. So I do really like the fact that we actually have this. There's also some other things that they did add. I think this might have been in 2022, but there's maintain annotation orientation. This actually came in when it was talking about like nested generic annotation families. If you rotated it, it didn't necessarily understand. It didn't understand which way that text was supposed to be rotated. It would break it in a lot of locations. It has this. The other one that's also in there too for like a lot of furniture families. This again might have been a 2022.1 feature. I can't remember, but you can actually have render appearance setting in here. So if it's a furniture family, you can actually say, yeah, render it as the geometry, or actually render it as a third party. So basically we're nesting in one of the entourage families automatically into it. So even though I'm in the furniture family, you can see I've got this little entourage family, and it automatically sets it up as render equality, render appearances, and it automatically associates those to a parameter where you can say, no, I wanted you to not render it as Alex, but I probably wanted you to render this as a furniture, a coffee table, sweet. And then you can start playing some of the properties.
There's stuff on that from Enscape logs and things, right?
Yeah, I think well, Enscape does it slightly different, because Enscape has a tool called the Enscape Asset ID. And therefore, when you go to render, it looks to, if there's a parameter called Enscape Asset ID, it'll go browse to whatever unique code the Enscape assets had. So Yeah, it's kind of weird. And as Simon said, RPCs have been out for a very long time, and it's really, really difficult to create your own RPCs. So kind of a little bit of a scenario. You can do it. I mean, I know CTC for a while was creating their own RPC content. CTC tools were mostly people and stuff. So yeah, there's a capability to do it. And even Inkscape allows you to go create your own RPC content for rendering purposes. So can be done, but it's definitely not simplistic to do. But so just start going through and not only just look at, most people go into families and they start looking at the family types and they're looking at, new parameters, new buttons down here, etc. Just want to point out that you might have new properties just in the overall properties of the content itself. So start playing through and looking at that when you get into it as well.
While we're looking at this family, it occurs to me that on the list, there's the fact that we can see filled regions in 3D now.
Oh, the fact that we can create.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's cool, but I don't actually know.
I think it was more the fact that you can actually create filled regions. So in our annotation family, or excuse me, in our model families, we've only ever been able to do masking. Hence why we always nested detail items. So we can now do filled regions inside of here. So if I wanted to get rid of the, table rectangle, I could do my own filled region in here. The other thing that is new to this one, and it's a type property, but in the type property of the filled region, you can actually, for the foreground pattern only, you can create a parameter for that.
Okay, so you can
decided how I'm going to do this, right? So you could have a detail, I keep saying there are my detail components. We've all seen my detail components sessions that I could literally just have one called my line-based family, and I could swap out the hatch pattern to concrete, to gypsum board, to whatever, and I could have one family that would be all-encompassing of everything, and literally it's just swapping out the foreground pattern. Doubt I'm going to go down that path, but this is something they gave us, and I have no idea why. I mean, what large company had been requesting this? Autodesk said, okay, we'll give that to you. I would much rather be able to swap out a profile family than swap out a fill pattern, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty bizarre that you actually could come in here and change the solid fill, or the change the fill pattern. So you can now just in your family call it filled region, give it a parameter and change it out if you wanted to. I've never been in a situation where I'm like, oh God, wish I could have one family and swap out that fill pattern. And the only time I ever had that was I'd created a detail component for one client who wanted all the different bar sizes to be a different color. And I tried suggesting just use filters in the project, but they wanted it in the family itself. So if I could have just had that and then just changed the one pattern there, as opposed to literally I drew a filled region for every size, 10M, 15M, 20M, 30M, I had like 19 filled regions on top of each other, this would have been that scenario. But that is the only scenario I can think of where I'm like, oh, this really needs to be something that I want to do. It looks like there were some comments that came up on what I was talking about. So is it Carrie or is it Garfield? Yeah, we're just going to say Carrie. Is there an advantage of using a generic asset material versus a non-generic material? Oh, okay. That does not help self-illumination, etc. So I think what he's talking about is when you go to the materials, and I don't know, Melissa, do you have a thought process on this? When you start looking at materials, you're going to see that you've got these materials with these little crazy little triangles on them.
Yeah, the old stuff.
And this is the old materials. Ironically, all the Inkscape users say they like these materials better. So I know a lot of the people doing Inkscape use these old materials, but if I come down here and go to the AEC materials and I just load up a new one, you're going to see that this new one doesn't have the little triangle because this isn't any longer one of the I forget what they're calling it. They call them like layer-based versus, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either.
But if you look at this one versus this one, there are some different options when you start looking at them for what you're going to be looking for, on the appearance tab, right? So if I come over here to the appearance tab and I look at that one versus this one, slightly different. There's transparency on this material. This material doesn't have transparency as translucency. So there's a few differences of them. Personally, for me, I like the newer materials. You've got a lot more depth that you can pull out of those. But again, I think there's not really a right or wrong answer to this. I've had some clients who went through and created all beautiful new materials using the new layered materials versus the old generic materials. So I'm not really sure if there's a positive one way or the other. I think it's just more of a, hey, I think this looks prettier. Which isn't that what all rendering is everybody calls it photorealistic. It's like I call it photo artistic because every single person wants it to look different.
Yeah. Physical based rendering, I think. That sounds right, Rick.
Yeah, and Michael said the whole being able to swap out the fill pattern seems like some other crazy troubleshooting issue we're gonna have to start going through in our life. It's like, oh yeah, why isn't this displaying properly? Oh, because somebody added a parameter, and even though it's called a gypsum board fill pattern, they've overridden it to be grass. Thank you, Rick. PBRs, that's right, physical-based rendering.
The new thing you can do to make your co-workers crazy.
Yeah, call it gypsum board, but make them all solid black. Why are all my, I'm then assign all of them.
Tie them all to a project. Wow, I can't even think of the word now.
I was going to say a global parameter. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, global parameter.
Yeah, so associate them all to global parameter.
Get someone's model and suddenly change all of their stuff to.
Yeah, that would be fun. It'd be a lot of setup for screwing with somebody. The setup I'd be willing to put in.
If there's anybody that would be willing to do that, I feel like it's you.
And then since we're on materials, one of the 2023 features, and actually Simon just put this up there too, used to be that when you duplicated a material, it would duplicate the material using shared assets. So in 2023, they've actually given us the capability. So I don't know if anybody ever did this before, that if I come down here to Air Openings, you'll see that right now Air Openings has the little hand here and no other assets are using this render appearance. But when you used to duplicate it, it basically shared the asset. So now you come over here and I could call this one Fred, and you have no idea that this air opening is one other asset is going to render like this, but you didn't know which one it was. So if you came down here and say, no, I wanted this one to be rendering red, well, you didn't just fix the air openings, you also changed Fred as well. So one of the new features in 2023.
That the hard way, right?
Oh, yes. I've had several clients like, I go to render and it changes, and then I go to the other room and it's changed back. What's going on? It's like, oh, because you're changing wood render assets. So yeah, this is there. So you can now duplicate the material and the asset. So now you'll see I've got air opening parentheses 1, even though it's Fred 1 down here. So it does duplicate the asset as opposed to us having to come up here and say, oh, let me go duplicate this asset. So that was something new since we were on that materials kick as well in 2023.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. That's always so confusing to try to explain to new users.
Like, what? Yeah, Sarah's like, just yesterday had to deal with somebody doing this. Like, yeah, I deal with it on a weekly basis. Okay, so I think we got some questions coming in now. So I think we'll jump ahead and see what others have for us. So what's our first question, Melissa?
Let's go with Rick's. What does the discipline field do for parameters in families anyhow? I just always leave it at common.
So you're an architect, because if you were a structural or mechanical engineer, you would absolutely know what these did. So when I'm creating a new parameter, what Rick's asking about is there's this discipline, or the type of parameter, I think he's talking, or the discipline up here, sorry. The discipline here, common. Common are going to be the ones that everybody can use. But if you come down here to structural, you can actually then start to see you've got all these different types of structural. And it is a good question, Rick, because I've been to so many structural engineer offices and they go create like a number value because they want to put values in kit. So they're like, oh, I didn't know there was a structural thing. So they leave it as common. They make their parameter a number parameter, and then they just start typing things in. And then I always get asked, well, it'd be really nice if we could just have it say kit or a K after it or whatever. You can. So when you switch it to the proper discipline, now you can start coming down here and like, oh, look, if I go to force, then when I go to force and I start looking at like the formatting or whatever, I can say this is going to be, you know, linear kips, this is going to be whatever. So you start changing all of the different values here. You can then start using those formulas, et cetera, as you get into it. So there's like the weight value down here, you know, warping content. There's MEP stuff, which I have no idea what any of this stuff means on the MEP, but this is how you can get to like your airflow, your density, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what the discipline is for. What was that, Melissa?
have at least some idea on some of those.
Yes, exactly.
Airflow, I feel like
You know what airflow is? Airflow density? Nope.
maybe
Don't know any of that.
what to use it for, but it's never what it is, right?
Yeah, that's what's funny. I'm always
flow per power. I'm gonna start using that in all the things.
flow per power. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So that's what the discipline is for when you get inside of there. Like I said, majority when you're creating family content, unless you're specific to structural or whatever. But this is also going to be true in your project environment if you are creating project parameters. So like one of the ones for me, I think also under structural, you have something for reinforcement, if I recall. So you can get like reinforcement area. I had one client who was just trying to do like reinforcement spacing. That's one of the values you can put inside of there. And that's my parameter name. And so now you'll see when I come down here for this, it looks like dimensions, etc. But the nice part is it's going to be similar to a length value, but this can be used in formulas in different ways. So that is what that stood for, Rick.
So does that tie into the discipline in your view settings?
No, not in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Just thought I'd throw that out there too.
When he first asked that, I thought he might be, and so I just do want to point this out. It's not necessarily discipline, but when I first read Rick's question there are certain tools, and I'm not sure if there are any in the MEP, that actually have up here, which is really bizarre. So like if you're a structural engineer, if you come up here and look at the materials for model behavior, you can assign a concrete material to an object, but you can come up here and say this is steel. So like for all these structural families, you see this material for model behavior. This is how A, join conditions are going to happen between like beams and beams or beams and columns. But B, if you leave it as other or concrete, if you do it as concrete, once you do it as concrete, A, you might get a different tool up here. Like now I've got display and hidden views, but also it'll now allow rebar to be placed into it or reinforcement. So a lot of those different things start happening, and you can see just by changing the material here, I'm getting different properties as I start going through and looking at this as well for this family in and of itself. The other thing that becomes really, really bizarre is if I make this steel, then it asks for a section shape. So if you are an structural engineer and you're trying to use any of like the steep connections tools, if you don't define what that structural shape is going to be here, these structural connections will not work. And once you choose one of the ones in here, let's just do a, that one, C-channel slope flange shape. Once you do this, it then automatically associates all of these parameters, not those, all of these parameters in there. So these structural parameters were not in here before, and it does need to use those tools for these structural connections. And from what I've been told, it uses all of these values when exporting out to analytical programs too. That I don't know, but that's what I've been told. So depending on what you do in certain things, they can even add a crap ton of different properties over here. Again, just looking at what you see and what you're changing out over here. I think there's some tools similar to that in the MEP families as well. Could be incorrect, but I believe I've seen some of those.
Exciting. Ooh, how about the always export as geometry?
Always export as geometry. It cracks me up. This button here works in tandem with, I believe, exporting out, or no, I think this one, you're confused. This one, I believe, is, hey, even if you're in a course level of detail and somebody exports the family, make sure you still export it out, not as course level of detail, but as the overall geometry. Or this works in conjunction with when you export to DWG, it exports it out as solids as opposed to meshes. But there's also a setting in the export that does that. So I can't remember which one this does. Personally, for me, I always have that one checked, and I'm just, honest truth, not sure I know exactly why. Like even structurally, a show family pre-cut and plan, which is also fun. So
we had to mess with that a lot. We had one of the big buildings we did was, it's, you know, one of those like has to be occupiable 20 minutes after a major earthquake. So we had cross bracing and giant stuff everywhere. And so we had to keep switching through having the structural engineer check or uncheck that depending on where we wanted to be. because they would check it, and all of our stuff would show up, you know, like this, so it didn't look like you could go through it, but really it was 15 feet in the air. So
yeah, this is a bizarre parameter in the structural content, and there's something else architecturally that has this. I think it's when you start doing multiple nests of doors, it'll actually act similar to this. But what this actually looks to is, so let's talk, this is, like you said, cross bracing or a slanted column. The show family pre-cut and plan view means I'm not going to show it cut where the family is physically being cut in the 3D model. I'm going to show it cut where the view range is set in your plan view inside this family. So if you're like show family pre-cut and plan, and this is a structural beam, and you want our structural column, and you want to see that where that column would hit the ground if it was sloping, you need to come into this family. You need to go to your view range and make your view range like 1/2 inch. Because if your view range is at 1 foot or 4 feet or 6 feet, then that's where it's going to show that slanted column cut, wherever the view range in this family is. And it's bizarre to me because there's nothing in here that tells you that's what that is. Right? If I get the tooltip, it says, oh, cut plane either the family or the view. Cool. What does that mean? And that's what it means. So yes, and by default, that's turned on. And so many times I get, like you just said, somebody puts cross brace in and it's like showing not correctly. And everybody's like, why is it showing way up here? I'm cutting through it right here. And it's the stupid show family pre-cut and plan view checkbox.
Yeah, we kept getting red lines. You can't have a door here because there's column. No. Really, they're up here and the door's down here.
Up here and down there. No.
I promise. Here's the elevation. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Good times, right? Let's see. Doors, stairs. Okay, we'll go with this one. So this one is looking for a quicker way to make a laser cut air terminal that is also an LED light fixture in a family.
Oh, I have one of those.
Oh, well, there you go.
Now I just got to remember it will not be done in 23, so I'll go to 20. Now I just got to remember what the client name was for that. When you're getting into that, it's going to be nested families. Oh my goodness, what was the client name? No. It's not that I don't know where it is. I just don't remember the client name for this.
Yeah, it's fun when they all start kind of. Yeah, you're just name dropping and showing off.
Oh, no, I'm not. Was it these guys? Nope. I don't remember, but basically what ended up happening is I went through and created a light fixture family that I then nested into my diffuser family. So the light fixture family itself was a shared family. So I did have the little shared checkbox button checked over here. So when it did get nested into another family, it would still schedule, it would still do everything that it's supposed to do. So I did that. I have a whole, like, that's not right, is it? No. I can't think of who it was. I hate that when you go back, it doesn't take you where you were. Well, I can't find family. I have a family for those. Actually, I have a whole entire exam room for it. But so yeah, when you get into that, that's exactly what you need to do. So you'll create your light fixture family. You'll nest that light fixture family into it. Mine, I believe, had a length value to it because they had LED all on the outside of that air terminal. It went into a whole exam room when you got into it. So yeah, I just can't remember what client I did that for. Well, that would make too much sense. Synergy, yeah, that's who it is. Huh? The word medical, you would think. Let me find the family now.
Not the lighted laminar ceiling. Yeah.
I think it's this one. See, it's been a few years, so it's not terrible. From Revit 17. Yeah, so if you get into this one, I think this is what you're talking about. So, this is obviously the diffuser. I even put, some sort of hatch pattern to look like a diffuser pattern. And then this is a nested family. So if you look at this, this is my LED light strip that went inside of here. So if I edited that family, we edit this family. This is my LED family. It's shared, right? And if I go to a floor plan, it's just got the length parameter here. Right, so I've got a length and I've got my little depth and did whatever I needed to do for this. And then that was loaded into this family. When I loaded it into this family, that length parameter was a type parameter. I don't remember why I did that here, but it's a type parameter. And so you'll see in that type parameter that I then, where's length? No, actually, it's got to be instance-based because it's shared. It's got to be here. So sorry, here we go. Here's the length parameter. And then that length parameter, I mapped to a formula that said, hey, here's the end length. And then there was going to be side lengths as well, right? So it just kind of went through and mapped into all of those. Since those were also shared, they do have a light source. So this is true of any light fixture. Like if you're trying to create, like, for lack of better terms, a track light or a multi-segment or multi-piece pendant light, the pendant itself needs to be a nested shared family. So when you load it into a family that has 5 or 6 of those, every single one of those has a light source. So that's kind of it. And I still just made this as my diffuser. I do believe that this even had a connector on it. I just don't believe the connector was showing. So we could still hook that up to the electrical as well. Or maybe, no, I think they said, no, they didn't want that in this one. I think one of these is just a, my electrical connector. So you've got the diffuser connector, and then just inside of this family, I did the one electrical connector because that's how this fixture was set up. So I didn't put any connectors in the LED strip, but I did put those just one connector in here to represent that and set it all up according to how I was told, because I don't understand any of that.
Airflow.
It did, yeah. I even got to use an airflow parameter and all of those fun parameters. See, comes full circle. Look, I've got my flow, all of those fun things inside of there. So hopefully, Garfield, that answers your question.
All right. So let's go, well, a kind of stair problem. Do you have any advice for adding a ceiling, like a drywall ceiling, to the underside of stairs easily, other than manually figuring out slope or top bottom height for a slope arrow?
Yeah, personally for me now, the biggest thing is if you are trying to use quantity takeoffs, now this might be fixed in 2023. I honestly can't remember if it was or not. But for me, when I do this, it's a handrail. So this is one of the things to me that when I'm always talking to people and everybody's thinking like a handrail is something that just starts going up. A lot of you have probably seen this sample handrail file. I get into it quite often. One of the handrail types I have is basically one that gives me head clearance, right? So this one I can put a handrail on just to verify, do I have the proper head clearance? Well, there's nothing difference between this handrail and my handrail underneath this stair, other than the fact that this one's got a different material and it's only 5/8 of an inch thick. So this way, when I go through and do it, this is just simply a handrail. It will follow the slope of the stairs automatically. You'll see I've got it, it's a railing, it's called gypsum. If I go to the type properties of this, it's 5/8 of an inch thick. It's got a rail structure where I've said, hey, I've got to figure out the height of this for the profile offset to match, to get that rail from the top of the stringer to the bottom of the stringer. So there is a property set you've got to play with in here. And then it's just using a profile that's 5/8 of an inch by however wide my stair is, and then a material called gypsum board, right? So if I had a 4-foot wide stair and a 6-foot wide stair and an 8-foot wide stair, I would have, my gypsum 3-foot, 4-foot, 6-foot, whatever. Each one of those would need to be a different height. But you'll see that I do it as a handrail. And if I do come through here and look at this, you can see that it does go all the way up. I will end up with weird miter lines like here and here. I don't know why it's the handrail trying to miter around, so it gives those to you. It's still flat, So it's just bizarre that it actually draws a line in there, but if I'm in an RCP or wherever else I'm doing, then I just use the invisible line tool. Kind of a downside. Now, the other thing that you may have to do, depending on the design of your stair, is if I edit the path for this handrail, you'll see that some of these need to have a height correction. So this one has a height correction of 3 inches. This one doesn't have a height correction, right? So that negative 10.5 or whatever the value was in the profile of the offset of the profile got me to the underneath side of the stringer. But once I got to landings, it wasn't the right height. So you can grab individual sketch modes if you need to and change it from by type on the height correction to custom. And it looks like the only one I had to do that on was this one here. So I just did custom on this one. Downside to this, it will not schedule quantities. So if you're trying to get your gypsum board takeoff in quantities or whatever, it will not do that for you. 2023, I can't remember if they allowed materials to be scheduled from handrails. Added so many things I can do to schedule, I forget if this was going to be on there or not. So just a heads up, it may work in 23, but prior to that, it definitely did not do scheduling.
It'll look pretty, right, when you're walking around.
But it looks pretty. You get the great rendering. You know, I made it go inside my stringers. I've done this for several clients where it's like more of a residential and it's just a 2x stringer and they put it underneath and outside. So yeah, like I said, the only downside is you might have to play with that height offset correction. But again, cut a section, do a distance, edit the path, put that value in there, you're done. So it's not like it's rocket science and then I don't have to figure out all the goddamn slope arrows and try to do this in 3 ceilings anyway. Much easier in my personal opinion, just to do it as handrail.
And then as a railing, you could also, if you have a multi-story stair, right?
Yes, so there's a railing. If I did a multi-story stair, it would do the multi-story railing with this. I'm not a big multi-story railing person or stair person, so.
It's better than it used to be.
Better than it used to be, and it's great for schematic design and design development, but rarely do I keep those when I end up getting into construction documents, because there's just usually nuances at every damn floor that I need to play with.
Just since you're on the stairs, I was just trying to figure out, so it looks like you didn't start with a tread on your second run. I'm just wondering, because a lot of times when I do those stairs, I will just slip the tread.
Oh yeah, so use the tool that nobody knows, and we're not looking through it, that nobody knows that when you tab select to get a run, or when you're creating the run, you have that's the whole stair.
Begin and end with riser thing.
Yeah, you have this checkbox over here that is begin or end with risers. Like up here, you can see I did not end with a riser. I did make this just be flat rather than having a riser go up. You do have that while you're modeling a new stair. So if you're in the stair command, and this is one that I think really must have been editing path of a handrail somewhere. So when you're in the stair command and you start drawing a run, I think one of the things, come on. One of the things I don't think people understand is when you're doing a stair, the properties you see is the overall stair, but you can also see it of each individual run. So you can choose to begin or end with that riser on each individual run as you go through. So most people don't ever hit the properties filter over here, but you have that capability, like, oh, sure, I don't want to start or end with the riser on this one.
I always forget, and then I end up changing it after the fact and having to adjust.
I always do it once and then forget I did it, and then go draw all these stairs where I didn't start with a riser. Like, damn it, I drew all the stairs in this project without a riser. Son of a. So yeah, that's kind of my downside on that one.
Just all the fun tricks you have to do to try to get your railings to not do the dumb thing at those joins in the middle there. Yeah.
The other thing that, this was one for a particular client that they wanted to show the luminescent tape for fire things on the stairs, but I didn't want it to run all the way across, right? It was in the stair. We could have done a stair nosing profile and used that. But in this case, again, this is just simply a handrail. Same scenario with before. If my treads were higher or deeper or shallower, then I'd have to create a new handrail type for this, but a nice little thing to do. And yeah, it doesn't give me the one reflector strip here. I don't really care. Somebody's that worried about, you're missing one, and then I don't really care. And ironically, I then took that one to a client who really wanted to show the full material all the way up the stair. And all I did was take that baluster I had, instead of being 2 inches deep, I made it the 11 inches deep. So again, this is also not a separate stair, but just simply a railing to represent the finishes on that stair.
Thanks. All right, let's see if that was our stairs. Should we move on to doors?
Sure.
Yay, doors. Okay, Sean says, I'm making my first door family to create frost stoops. Is there a way to add items to the door opening that would heal the interior slab on grade so that the floor stamp doesn't have to be edited to fold the slab edge into the door opening? I tried, but not being able to join the opening to the floor leaves a line between the opening slab and slab fold and the floor slab.
No, there's not, unfortunately. What I do in all of my door families, and because I give my families to a crap ton of interior people, and it drives me crazy when I see interior people draw that floor finish centered on the wall. It drives me crazy. It's like, well, no, technically that would go underneath the center. It would be centered on the door leaf itself. So for me, and I'm very odd on this, but for me, I end up modeling in a reference plane that I do have as a weak reference that is literally centered on that door. So if you wanted to do something similar, you're not going to be able to build it in and join it. But if you wanted to be able to do something similar, you can see that I've got a reference plane right here. Now that's the face of the wall. That's my material return. Hold on, let me go through and show a stupid number in those. Material return, 4 and 4. So I think it's this one. Yeah, this is my floor material transition. So I created a weak reference plane that is literally half the thickness of my door leaf coming from the face of the door. So if it moves in or out, now my interior architects can use the align command or pick command and draw right to that center reference plane. So at least they're going to have something in there to line it up. So you could do something similar, Sean, where you can have it in there, but no, you're not going to be able to create an extrusion in the door that would allow you to join it to a floor. So that's all I got. Possibly create a reference plane to help with that tool, but that's literally all I have. That's also honestly why I don't ever model these. Theoretically, the floor finish would probably go right to the inside jamb edge. I usually try to go to like the underneath side. So if somebody shifts the door a little bit, at least I've got this reference plane I can go through here. So I add some extra reference planes to my door families that literally do nothing in the door family. They're just there for the interiors people.
We've been having a few clients ask about thresholds and having them actually modeled in the door family. So we've been kind of going back and forth on, is that just way too much? Is that going to drive people crazy?
Are you talking like exterior thresholds or floor transition thresholds?
With ours, it was both. I assumed on Sean's question, because it was a frost stoop, I assumed his was specifically exterior.
Yeah, I've went rounds on that as well. Yeah, I would like to have that as built in as part of the door, but then again, now I'm modeling that into the door and I don't use it at 80% of this time. Right, because a lot of times I don't have either a threshold on the material transition, or B, it's the same material through the office into the hallway or whatever else. So those are the things in my brain that it's always a hard one to do, because yeah, if somebody moves the door and the threshold isn't part of it, now all of a sudden the threshold doesn't move and you've got parts you're tracking down and trying to keep track of. Yeah. But B, now are you overly weighing down your family because you've got that in there for the 10 to 20% of times that you may use it. I don't know, I'm always up. Yeah.
No, we're definitely having that. Is it worth it? Is it just too much?
And like with the doors too, I haven't gotten to the fact of, I have with my cabinets adding and swapping out the hardware, but with doors, I keep thinking, I know you guys have some hardware in yours, but it's just like so different of then am I modeling in the option for a kick plate on both sides versus, you know, the hardware on both sides? Is it pulled? Yeah. Where's the closer? The closer could be on both sides. You know, it's all these different things. When you get up there, it's like, oh my God, every time I try to do this to my stuff, I overwhelm myself with all the options there could be. I then just give up and walk away.
Yeah. Yeah, we even had to do that because we added trim to both sides of the frame families.
Yeah, I've created different
because sometimes you'll have trim on one side and maybe not the other side, and you might want a different. Yeah,
I've started I was trying to build it all into my one door, and I'm like, it's getting too complicated, so I just created a separate door family called door with trim. So yeah, there's all those things that you can do it, but it's just like, oh my God, are you overly complicating this in the one door family?
Yeah, or like it'll work for this one person and it'll be great, but for everybody else, it'll just be extra stuff.
Yeah, and Michael, I agree. That's why I do model finished floors. Hence where I did put that reference plane in there, because then I can put it where I want it to be, but theoretically it should be centered on the door. So that's kind of one of those things where I did in there too. But yeah, I always model finished floors. And I believe Parallax, you guys model your finished floors as ceilings, do you not?
Yeah, I think that's what Aaron prefers. I liked Revolution Design. He's got one of his plugins where you could actually, do you have the update floors and manage floors?
Yep.
But you could actually use a floor and set it up, and it puts it in the room and also offsets it, whatever the thickness is. So
yeah,
that's the reason that we like, or
the only thing that, and it's a limitation, is not of the Revolution Design tools, the limitation of the API. I wish it could use the pick walls tool when doing it. So if the walls move, it would do it, and I wouldn't have to keep hitting update.
It's true.
You know what the best thing about the Revolution Design Steve's tools is notice how mine just says RD. He actually has a setting.
Oh, that's right. You can change it.
That you can go into the application settings and you can choose what you want the tab name to be. So rather than having Revolution Design running off the screen with all, I wish every single person had this. Now, there's also, is it PyRevit or is it EF Tools? One of these will actually allow you to rename. I think it's EF Tools, which is a subset of the PyRevit tools. Yeah, shorten ribbon names. So you can actually go in and choose which names you want all the ribbons to have. He's got the out of the box one set up. So when you're like me and you have way too many add-ins, you can get shorter versions of those names. Like do I need it to say architecture? Do I need it to say structure? Do I need it to say, you know, you can actually do that as well.
You can figure that out.
So yeah, I know EF Tools has it, and PyRevit actually has one in here that I love too. That's called my Minify, the Revit UI. You can go into the settings there and choose which ones you just want to hide. So I love the fact that Steve gives us the capability, Revolution Design gives the capability to rename it, but PyRevit does allow you to go into the settings and choose which ones you want on or which ones you want to hide. I don't use these on a regular basis. Let's go ahead and hide all of these versions out there. So I thought that was pretty cool too. Because when I'm sure you're like I am, Melissa, you got so many damn add-ins, they all start getting these huge names. You're like, I can't see the modify.
Yeah. Well, it's usually okay on my desktop because I have giant monitors. I get on my laptop and it's like, living spaces. Yeah.
All right. So what's the next question?
Let's see. So let's go. Is it possible to schedule a wall sweep that is defined in the edit type of a wall?
Yes. If you're in Revit 23.
Newly available.
Yeah, so if I go to a new project and start looking at this new project, sure. That was one of the things that was added to Revit 23 was the capability to schedule, filter, and something else to wall sweeps. So if I then go into schedules and quantities, new schedule, I go down to walls. You've got the wall sweep schedule here. I think you can do this in a previous version. Maybe it's just the fact that you can filter them now. I don't remember. Let's actually go to 20 and see what we can do in 20. Let's go schedules.
Yeah, I remember that was something to do with.
I was thinking that was in 23, but I'm sitting there going, no, I've seen the plus. So yeah, you just go to walls and then do wall sweeps like this to schedule it.
Was it tagging? Yeah, they're definitely.
Oh no, I think Yasser might be right on this one, that this only gives the ones where you use the wall sweep command.
this. Yeah, that's right.
And that might be what they fixed in 23. So let's just come in here and just say, what am I even going to put on here for a wall sweep?
Oh, so you can do the profile of it too?
Type, length, I don't know, profile, okay. Let's go back here, swap these out to be walls that have some sort of sweep in them. Don't one of these have a sweep in them?
Is it one of the stacked wall? Well, something they use in the stacked wall. It's been a long time.
Yeah, let me use these. Oh, screw it. We'll grab this one. We're going to edit type. We're going to edit structure. Turn the preview on. Go to my section. Go to sweeps. Add a sweep. Sweet. Go back to the schedule.
Sweet.
Nope, not there. So I guess, yeah, so the question and answer is no, because I'm in 23 doing this. But yes, I think what you've always been able to do is if you did wall sweep like this, I got to be in a not plan view. So we did wall sweep, boom, and boom. Then that shows up in the wall sweep schedule, but not the ones built in. So no, still can't do it. Yeah, I can't remember. They added something to wall sweeps in 2013. I think it was just actually you could create filters. I think if you go to the view and you go to filters, I don't think previously you could do.
Because we had a question about that.
I think it was wall sweeps got added in filters. God, and so now you can wall sweep. But again, I'll bet this is only type name. Sure. Greater than blank.
So if you had rubber base as a sweep, you could filter it out.
So yeah, but I still don't think that's going to work on the ones that are built in. EG, filters, add. Did I just break the one that was there, I hope? Yeah, so again, so it still doesn't work on the ones that are pre-built in.
But at least with those now, if you can do a global parameter, if you're worried about it might move up or down, then the after the fact, the glue-on ones aren't as bad as they used to be.
Yeah, and ironically, that's going to be one of my whole sessions at Built is how to use global parameters for design design alternatives, kind of like design options, dealing with reveals and sweeps and walls.
All right, you can send me my check for the nice segue.
Nice segue there. Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Accidental segue.
Thanks for that shameless plug.
Right. So we have two questions left right now from Sarah. And I think that they're related. So the first one is, I sometimes want or need an arrow with more than 2 lines. How can I get this? So
I assume
arrow, yeah, are you saying leader and you need more than just an elbow?
So what I don't think a lot of people knew is in 2017, I think it was, when they changed the text, you can go to the leader command and just do, or the text command and just do this, and then hit escape. Is it not escape? I forget, I don't ever do this.
Or if you just click, yeah, we got the ability.
Oh, you just hit close, I believe. Yeah, you just hit close. So if you're going to do text, you do this, and then when the text itself comes up for you to put, you just hit close. And when you hit close, you have a leader now. It's just a leader it's just a leader field with a blank text value. So you can do if you wanted this. So if you're talking tags in 2022.1, you can now have tags with multiple things as well. But if you're talking text, well, first off, text, you can actually just say add leader. So you wanted a leader to the left and whatever, you could do that. You could do the same if it was a symbol. If I just put in a symbol as well, and you've always been able to do that with text, and I believe symbols, maybe not always, but they added it. Add a leader, and then add a leader, and then add a leader. So you've been able to do this with text and symbols for a long time. In 2022.1, they added a tag. So if I came in here and tagged this wall, then I could select that tag And I could come up here and say I wanted to add or remove a host, right? So now I come here and say I want to add or remove a host. I also wanted to add this host, and it will let me grab an element of the same type. Now I obviously can't add a host that's going to be a door to this tag, but I can start doing both of them. And you can see that I believe this merge, this whole thing came up to play with them. Ended up being a little bit different in 2023. I think they tweaked this a little bit, but you can say, hey, I want to go remove this leader, finish, and now it's gone. You have the add remove host. So I really have never understood the remove leaders, but you've got a whole bunch of different options. And this came out in 2022.1 for your tag. So if you were talking your text, always been able to do it just by hitting the add leader. If you were talking annotations, same thing. If you were talking tags prior to 2022.1, that was impossible. It is possible now in 2022.1. And
she did just clarify, and it was more what I was thinking. She's not saying two arrows were the same one, but she needs more than just the one shoulder. So
oh, no, your host.
Jog and
your host, you only get the one shoulder, or you could convert it to an arced leader. So you can make it an arced leader. So you can go up and over. There you go, and it's truly like an arc. It's like a partial. It's like an arc. It's not even like AutoCAD used to be like splines. It's like an arc leader. I have one client who does this, and I'm like, really? But no, if you want more than one elbow, no, you're right.
Fudge something graphically, put the one in that fits, and then just yeah, that does suck though. But I guess you could always use your kind of standalone arrow and put that in the same spot and have it go, or put it at the end so you could go to your elbow and then put your other one, which again, fudging graphically.
I don't think, and I've just got to look,
Or no, it just you don't need that thing, obviously, so just take it out of your model.
Just redesign your project to fit your text.
Yes.
Right, just make your project.
About Revit driving your design can go crazy. Sorry, I couldn't detail that nicely, so I just got rid of it.
I just got rid of it. Yeah, I just wanted to check to see if I knew they added in 23 some family types for generic annotations. I was gonna say, could you do it as you could do it as a modeled adaptive component line, but they didn't have model lines all over the place. So never mind, it's a terrible idea.
See, my solution is so simple. Just get rid of it. You won't have to note it anymore. It'll be fine. No one will notice.
No one will notice.
Follow up on that is, where are the leader line weights assigned? Because they do seem to be visibly different from Keynote leaders.
Yeah, so when you added like text and you see there's going to be line weight, the line weight is not the line weight of the text. The line weight is the line weight of the leader. So it's very, very bizarre. When you edit your text, you're going to see line weight up here. This is the line weight of the leader, unfortunately, as well as the arrowhead. So if you're even doing like an arrowhead that's even simply a dot, you'll see that, well, it's not a dot. I thought I chose dot. So if you grab like dot, it's going to be the same arrowhead as the dot, even if the dot's filled. I think the dot actually might have a hole, but yeah, so that is the line weight of that. So if you're coming down like, no, let's go back to a line weight of 1, and you say, okay, you'll see the dots are going to get a little bit smaller too, just because of the line weight for the dot itself.
Well, if we got through the line weights through the manage, is that one using the annotation line weights or the? It
does use the annotation line weights, yes. So the text, the tags, the symbols all use it. But if you're trying to say, hey, this line's too thin and I want it fatter, I have had clients like, oh, I really want this to be different than that. So again, if you go in
Keynote really fast.
Keynote, sure.
Because yeah, so she's saying the tag and Keynotes don't have that option. So it is there's like a slightly different
Keynote element. You think that they're actually going to have? I guess it doesn't really matter if there's no. Sure, it's a division 10.
I'm not worried about what the leader looks like.
Yeah, and then with keynoting, I believe that is under object styles. Because we can't keep shit consistent. I think when you go to object styles, annotations, keynotes, it's the keynote tags. And I think this, change the right one. Now, the bizarre part with the keynote is it's also going to be the border of the keynote. So that's coming out as a default. So if you edit that family, you can create a subcategory of these lines so you can get them as different line weights. So if I grab the lines here, they're just set up as keynote tags. You could go create a new object style. So you'd have to go to manage, object styles, under keynote tags, create something new, cool box. And I wanted this to be a line weight of 1. That's fine. We'll say okay. We'll load that in. Oops. Cancel. I got to select it and change them. Change these from keynote tags to box. Load that into my project. Project 1. Okay. And then say overwrite. And now I have a different line weight. So yeah, if you're just leaving it as default, keynotes use object styles. So you have to create your box, if you're doing a box, as a different one than what the arrowhead and line are going to be using.
If you turn the box on in your text style, is that also driven by the, so just your regular text again?
Oh, the text box.
So if you make that a boxed, is that the same?
And type. I'm having click issues today. Could be the fact that I have 4 Revits open, who knows?
I'm sure it's not. And then also a zoom.
And then a zoom. I believe the box on the text is the same as well, yes.
So the line weight, so it's,
yeah.
So text, if you're using a box, it has to be the same as your leader, but on a tag, you can create a.
Yeah, on a tag, you can create an object subcategory.
Oh, yeah, and Rick's saying keynote tags can have multiple leaders also, right?
In 2023 or 2022.1 and newer, yes.
And then they do the same thing where it will say varies or whatever you've set up, right? If you happen to point off to something different.
Yeah, so if you pointed to a different wall, so if I walled over here, generic 8-inch, and then I grab this tag and do a new host. Show multiple leaders. What am I tagging on this? You grab type mark. It's got to be grabbing type mark, right? I thought the out of the box walls had type marks on them.
I believe so.
And then it'll say varies. And you can change in Revit what that says. It was again a 2022.1 feature under your manage, additional settings, annotations. I thought it was here. Nope. Multiple value indications is down here. Display varies or whatever you want.
I would put you suck, but like you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
You're bad and you should feel bad. That might be really long.
All right, we got one more question and we're already 5 minutes over, but it seems like most people haven't left yet. So I think we're still good.
Sweet. All right, Benjamin, here we go. So any ideas on how to create a tilt-up panel building that is sloping down a sloped side with a 6-foot elevation change over the length of the building? Slope site. Yes, that makes more sense. Slope site with a 6-foot elevation change over the length of the building, which is 1,000 feet long. The footing needs to have a linear slope from high to low, as well as continuous beam framing system. I'm just going to jump in really fast and be like, Brian would use railings.
No, actually, I have a client who does this all day long because one of my clients, he does cow milking facilities. And it's really bizarre because a cow milking facility can be 3,000 feet long, but cows can't do stairs. So literally the building will be like at a 1 or 2% grade for the 3,000 feet long. So the entire building is slanted. The best way that we've come up to work on that one is to literally draw reference planes. So he draws a reference plane at the base of the walls where he wants it to be a reference plane at the top, and then he attaches the top and the base wall to it. You cannot use footings for that, because footings will not go on a sloped based wall. So if you're trying to use your structural footings, it's not going to work for that. So I believe he just then uses a beam, and he uses that same reference plane to host the beam, and he does a beam as his strict footing. But yeah, so it really starts getting into it, because like, here's the wall. Obviously this is not, 1,000 feet long or whatever, but when you do a reference plane, so if I go to architecture, reference plane, sure, that's the slope of your building, it's going to be parallel above and below. So literally he just draws two, and then he takes all of his walls and he just says, hey, actually only takes the parallel walls, the perpendicular ones are still square at the bottom, but he'll take these and he'll just say attach. You do have a top and a base, so you can say attach the base to that, go back and grab attach again and attach the top to that. So then as his design changes or whatever changes, if he moves the reference planes, all of those walls move up and down with it. He originally started off by doing editing profile, realized that was just a pain in the ass, so this is what he does. And of course, he names all of these sloped top. I can't spell anything, but you get the point.
Or slopted, that's fine.
Slopted top. So kind of that's the scenario that he does on all of this. And he also will start choosing these as the work plane too. So again, giving this as a name base. I believe even in the floor plan, then when he does his railings, because he's got railings, again, as a cow milking facility, he can go set the work plane. That's not what I wanted. He can go set the work plane to be that named, I thought he could do it a name reference plane. Oh, he models his floors first, and then he picks the floor as this. Then he models his floor based off of that reference plane, and then he picks that floor to be the slope for the handrail.
So he does a floor by extrusion, or does he attaches?
He, I don't remember how he does his floors. Maybe he does an actual slope on the floor. He does like a slope arrow where it says, hey, all of his stuff is a 1% slope. It's not like the question came up 6 foot and 1,000. It's like, no, it's a 1% slope.
Yeah,
so I think he does a slope arrow.
You don't want milkshakes.
Yeah, I think he does a slope arrow at 1% or whatever it's going to be. And then it looks like Benjamin had a follow up to that. He just, so like doors or anything, the reveals, you're going to be hosed. If you're trying to do reveals, you cannot do reveals using the reveal tool. But the doors, when he goes in and you start looking at the doors, a door is going to be flat anyway. The door is not going to slope. And again, on that 1% slope or whatever it is he's looking at, you do then just basically have to come in and say, cool, let me move the door. He does this all in 3D or in an elevation. That's where the door needs to go, or the edge or whatever you need to do. His door opening does cut out like the footing or foundation wall or whatever he's doing. So there definitely is some work on doing all of this. But when you are talking reveals, I believe the way that we've done the reveals in his case is we've created a line-based family for him. So let me go load family. Let me go into, I think it's my openings. I've got my reveals. Generic model, opening, or is it called reveal? Yeah. So this is a line-based family, and part of the reason why we like it as a line-based family is when you go to place this component, usually does it in 3D, but you can do it here, but I'll do it in 3D just to show you. A line-based family, put it on the same wall that's sloping. I think this is my sloping wall. You can just say place on face, and then he can draw this, get it to the slope he needs. Again, now it's understanding that's parallel to the top and the bottom. It does not cut it automatically. So there is a process of having to come back and use the cut tool and say, hey, I want to cut the wall by this reveal. But now it's still a line-based family, so he can adjust it, he can move it, he can dimension to it, he can do whatever he wants to do. Doesn't have to be plumb straight, whatever. He can do whatever he needs to do on those reveals. Vertical reveals, they work fine, but you can then start going through and looking at all of that as well.
So now he's saying if the doors are perpendicular, so the door needs to be ever so slightly tilted too.
Oh, so you're oh, so you're putting the whole, so you guys aren't, you're just sloping the whole building. See, for him, he does all the roofs flat. Ironically, as I think about this, he doesn't even attach the top of these because the roofs are all flat for constructability. So you're saying
taking the panels and putting them on a pad, so they're,
yeah, you're putting all the panels on a crazy slope.
rectangle and be like boop.
Yeah, in a scenario like that, I'm trying to think, I might actually create a family that I could just put in and do it with.
Yeah, well, because you could just turn off the uncheck always vertical in those doors, right?
Yeah, the only other thought I'm having is the capability to, and I'm gonna go into an elevation to do this again, would be to part out your wall. Because if you're talking tilt up construction anyway, you could draw your entire wall using this attach, and then you could go say create parts. And then one other thing about when you divide a part is, or you create a part, and it's going to break the part up into all the different layers if you wanted to. So like when you create a part, I'm going to get the brick layer, the masonry layer, whatever. But if it's just like a concrete wall or whatever, but when you do this, you can now say, I want to go divide the parts. And you can divide the parts one of two ways. Let's say pick a plane, not the face here. You can do it one by sketching, just by saying, hey, I want to edit the sketch and I want to go from here to here. I'm assuming I'm going to be somewhat perpendicular. I did not go down low enough. Right, and then what's cool about a part, when you divide a part, you can also give it a division profile. So if you have profiles in here, you can change the profiles. You can have a gap to it. You can have it offset. You can have it get mirrored. You can have it do a lot of different things with these profiles. And then once you say finish, and then finish again, you're going to see that back in the 3D view. I don't know which color I'm on. I'm on the pink ones. You're not going to see anything happening in this 3D view. But if I come up here and say, ooh, I don't want to show the original wall, I want to show the parts, that you can now see I've got this wall parted out into the different segments. So this might be something else to consider, is doing parts. I'm thinking I'd still probably create a family, but you can see that I've done it, I've set this up, and if I actually edit that division, I could say, give me a 1/2-inch gap in that. So since you're talking tilt up construction, there's going to be some gaps inside of there, etc. when you start getting into it.
Well, it could even get to, I mean, I would assume that they would be trying to standardize the panels as much as possible. So hopefully only a handful of panel types. Maybe you do just end up building a rectangle panel and then just placing that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the problem with doing that though is now you're going to be trying to put doors. You're going to have to create doors that aren't wall hosted. You know, the other thing about when you're doing parts is copy multiple. I'm just going to come in here and go to there, go to there. The other thing that when you are trying to divide this part too, if I come up here and say I want to divide this parts, another option you can say is intersecting references. And if you have reference planes drawn on each side, oops, I didn't name them.
Use your slopted.
My slopted.
Structurally will be parts and assemblies for the panel types.
Should have named these. We'll call that one 1. We'll call this one 2. And now when I divide this part, and I go to reference planes.
Well, and just while you're doing that part, my old firm, we did a lot of tilt up as well. So sometimes we did a reveal family that also was a joint family. We also tried out doing split with gap, because that will, actually put in your joint, put the inch or whatever you need, and still keep everything locked together. So you could still move that wall. It's one thing. And then we also played with using a curtain wall and making each of, so you could have some mullions that were your joints and some mullions were just reveals.
Yeah, exactly.
And just placing in the concrete as the panel. So,
but if you're then talking that your door needs to be put at that angle, you're going to need to probably create a custom door, because I don't even think in a door family, like you have always vertical or anything like that.
Yeah, because I'm totally in a door family right this second. And always vertical is checked.
Is it?
I think it could be. I assume you could uncheck it.
I don't know. Let's find out. Let me open it, do it, and uncheck it. And
no, nobody seems to be running away. So
everybody's like, what is this craziness he's doing? Yeah, for my client, it's not, it's all stick or metal frame construction. So when they get into it, it's literally, I think the roof is stepped and it's flat, because everywhere they step the roof, they use that for venting. Because in case, if you really wanted to know something bizarre, that cows produce a crap ton of heat. So even when it's below freezing, you still have to vent the places, the whole buildings, because cows produce so much heat that they will actually overheat and die.
Well, and probably crap ton is actually the right measurement for cows.
Yeah, see, it's not even going to let me.
Okay, so even if it's, so would it have to be a work plane based instead of a?
I think you'd actually have to create one that allows you to programmatically put in. I have a window that I can do trapezoidal like that, but it's all custom. No, my view's not parallel to that wall. Oh, which is why the rotate didn't work. There you go, being smart, Rick.
Sorry. No, sorry. Don't apologize for being right, Rick. Come on. Yes, and he was also saying, could you do that for the wall up to the underside of stairs if you lock a reference plane?
No, the underneath side of stairs cannot be chosen for
No, so if you were to put a work plane at the bottom of your, or a reference plane.
Yeah, so I think you have to, well, let's see, I've got the door family open.
Attach your wall to that reference plane.
And so if we say this is going to be work plane based, yeah, you don't even get work plane based as an option for doors.
It wouldn't actually be a door family.
Yeah. Or you create a door family. Like I have a window family where I can change the angle of the tops, the bottoms, and the sides. Because, you get architects like, oh, I want a trapezoidal window. I think you'd have to do something similar to that.
Do you think you could start out with a generic model or something to make it?
Well, and I wonder if it's because all these have nested families and all the nested families are then set to be always vertical. Yeah, I don't know on that one. Whatever it's going to be, you're going to need a custom ass door family. That's all I got.
Yes. No, Rick's question was about if you were to take a reference plane and draw that under your stairs, and then you could just attach your wall up to that.
Yes, you could do that, but then it's not going to update automatically when you do that.
Yes, you would have to keep updating said reference plane.
Yep, and that's why I like doing the handrail for that theory. Yes, you could absolutely do that. You can also attach walls. Like it's funny to me, like especially if it's on something curved. I get a lot of architects who draw a curved half wall, like around a ramp, and then they want that to be attached 6 feet above the ramp. So what I actually do is I draw a sloping roof that I then do a cut profile and plan. I make it my wall cap or the top of the gypsum board, and then I attach my wall to the roof. But I've also done a vertical opening and plan.
I totally did that just in the house I've been helping model for a friend. Although I've been wondering, because can't we, I haven't upgraded it, but can we do curved walls and also edit the profile of those now?
No.
2023?
No. Still no curved walls and editing of profiles.
For some reason, I was thinking that was a change, but maybe I'm thinking sloped walls, not curved walls.
No edit profile, could be because I'm not in a 3D view. But no.
Okay, I must have been thinking sloped walls. Let's see. Okay, and we should look at Casey's now.
We're already 20 minutes over. What's another 10?
Look how much fun we're having. So, would you know of a way to have the element tag change colors if the 3D modeled element is a generic size, specifically columns, beams, or piers? We're trying to figure out a way to have the tag automatically change from a red color when using a generic size to the normal black once we set a true size.
To change the color of a tag, no, you can't change the graphics. You can't use the graphics of something visibility wise. Paul Aubin actually created, it was a very fun workaround where he did a text parameter where basically, and then he used wingdings, it was hilarious. So he did a text parameter that basically said, hey, if it's this, then put up this text, otherwise just be blank. And what he actually did is use wingdings. He did like an uppercase R and an uppercase D or whatever. So in wingdings, it was a big, you can't do symbol, and he made that red. And then he found the wingdings uppercase letter D or whatever it was for a green check mark, said, hey, here you go. So he basically did something like that, but you can't change the color of the box, at least not to my knowledge. I've never seen it. But he did actually have like a little red circle versus a green square, like, hey, this has been updated, and you've gone through, and he tagged it all with that. So he does have that. It was on one of his LinkedIn tips in the previous few months. And he also did it. He did it at one of the conferences. I think it was Midwest U a couple of years ago. But yeah, so he had a way to, you have to do it as a text value. So you basically are tagging the comments with a formula based off of something else. And I can't remember. I think it was a yes/no parameter, but I don't think you can use based off of the length. I think you can only do it based off of a yes/no parameter.
So if they have their types that are generic, then it could be looking for.
There'd have to be like a toggle in that says this is generic that was always toggled for the generic type. Yeah, something like that. I don't totally recall, but Paul Aubin did it. So it's on one of his LinkedIn, LinkedIn learning sessions. So I would look that one up.
Maybe you should write a note and you can start with that next month if we don't get questions early enough.
He also has the handout on his website. So if you go to the Paul Aubin, I don't even know what his website is anymore. If you go to his website, he actually has a handout for the Midwest U that talked about it as well.
It's Paul F. Aubin Consulting or something, isn't it?
Something like that.
Around here somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
All righty. And now that we are way past time, I think we'll go ahead and call that time. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I don't think anybody left, so I think it's kind of nice. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, whatever. What's another 25 minutes of billable hours?
Now you can tell other Brian, maybe he had more people, but you stuck around longer.
I stuck around. So even though he had more people,
quality over quantity.
Oh, I'm glad everybody can still work, possibly listen in, and still be somewhat productive while they're working and stick around for the next half hour. So tell your friends, families, enemies, people you need to rock your babies to sleep, play this recording. I have recorded these. I have put a couple of them up. There's 3 whopping videos on my YouTube channel. I will tweet that out at some point in time where it is. I just keep forgetting to upload them and tweet it once I do. So those should be there for anybody who wants to watch the last 3. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I finally decided I'd start recording it. So hopefully it'll actually work for you guys, and I appreciate everyone being here, and hopefully I'll see everybody plus more next month. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Melissa.